Welcome to another episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up. I'm Joel Hoxley, your host, and our associate host is Kellen Clark. It's
Howdy.
really wonderful to have you here today, Kellen. Let's see, you're going to give us some really good insight on civics today. So tell us what's happening.
Well, we have had a lot of concern around political division here in America, a lot of concern that democracy is weathering, that our rights are being weathered away. And many have begun to suggest, including Vivek Ramaswamy, among other groups, that the government needs to step in and expand our civics teaching, make people know more about the government, and hopefully make a more informed population to improve and drive our democracy. Others, however, have been skeptical.
But can we actually afford to eliminate something like LGBT studies or classes that we have about gender identity? Would that not be evil to take government over our identity?
Oh, we already do that, Joel. Don't worry. Look, here's the thing. Those kinds of things, gender studies, all those kinds of classes that are controversial, people don't like, exist primarily on the college level. If we are being honest with ourselves, that doesn't especially in this state, in the state of Florida, that doesn't exist on the high school level. If any discussion does exist, it is either outside of the classroom, like in like a club, or as a brief snippet of of the civics, and that's it. It's not a prevalent part of the curriculum, um, and the curriculum is very generally, for the most part, tailored well towards the government. Kinds of
Really, I haven't. I'm going to tell you a story.
hit
As
me.
an adult, I went to Valencia College,
Yeah.
and at this time, government was required course.
Yes.
The absolute level of understanding of our government with these young, you know, children coming out of high school was lacking beyond anything I've ever seen before. I've never it's like government isn't taught at all in our high schools or our elementary schools. And what is taught is so basic that people don't understand our government and how it works, why
Yeah.
it's important to vote, or how much government is actually here around us.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a big, broader issue outside of it. It's not just history that's slipping. We looked at some statistics yesterday, in one of our in a meeting for top secret confidential project, and what we saw was how much the education had been slipping. The test scores, even though Florida is doing better than most, they're still going down. The average understanding is going down, and it's across the board. It's also science. It's people who seem to still believe the world is flat, or who don't know the most basic information about science. It's people who don't know anything beyond the most rudimentary math, though you could argue that's not so important, and or people who know like barely anything to do with literature because it's so neutered. Outside of AP and college level courses, the standard curriculums I think have been neutered in the name of simplicity so that they can throttle scores up because it looks good for them from a funding point of view. So many schools feel incentivized for to make their curriculums that aren't tailored towards the most advanced students to be extraordinarily basic.
Well, I think that eliminating testing statewide was a good plan to allow the teachers the flexibility to teach because teachers are so scared of, you know, being held accountable that they have to teach to a test instead of teaching where the test automatically would be passable by the education they were given.
Mhm.
Today's society, I would trust a naturalized citizen over a born citizen on the knowledge of our government and how it works and why it works. The same criteria it takes to become a naturalized citizen should be the basic knowledge that should come out of high school. And that is not happening. That is not happening
Yes.
today. It has not happened for a long time. And and when you talk about patriotism, I believe that naturalized citizens have a better connection and understanding of our government than our own citizens. So I think it's important that we get to a basic understanding that our government is a republic and not a democracy. And why
Yes.
is it and why is it a republic and not a democracy? What's the difference between a democracy? What is the preamble to the Constitution? What does the Constitution say? How many amendments to the Constitution? These are all questions that
Yes.
naturalized citizens can answer, and we
Yes.
can't.
Yes. I I have always been a firm believer that for something like civics specifically, we should have to take a citizenship test when you're done with it in your middle school, junior high days. After you take civics, regardless of which state you're in. Of course, we can just talk about Florida state level, which is, I believe, seventh. You take your civics, you should have to take a citizenship test. And then when you're
Mhm.
done, maybe you could get like a little certificate from the school saying, you know, pass the citizenship test to make it, a very involved thing. Like it's that it's something that you want. Because it feels like for the lot of students, testing is designed to be feeling miserable. Most people view tests as complete enemies for not totally unfounded reasons when you think of something like how the SAT used to work. But absolutely, citizenship tests should be paramount. Students should be more directly involved with something, and students should be taught reasonable steps they can take to engage with their community. Because right now, you can be taught, what does the Senate do? How do you impeach the president? But these are actions taken by people who aren't the average citizen. You know, how do you write to a member of Congress? Or to a member of the Senate? Where do you find meetings for your local government? How do you engage in these things? That is another thing that needs to be emphasized. That people can be involved in the policymaking process more than they are now. In my generation, especially, many people are convinced that their voice does not matter, that everything is in the hands of the corrupt government officials. A lot of things are in the hand of corrupt government officials, but things like local and state government, you can take
See,
part in and
see,
make a reasonable difference, but people
let's
don't
stop
think
there.
that they do.
Let's stop there for a moment because you talk about, you know, the crooked, you know, politicians, and it doesn't it doesn't pertain to the majority of our politicians that are very good. But teaching civics in school is important. It's just important because it fosters information and responses to citizenship. So the key aspects that I believe uh, need to be it's civic knowledge, critical thinking, civic engagement, respect for diversity, ethical behavior, media literacy, practical skills, and historical context. Now, if you can't get those eight fundamental uh, topics taught to a young person today, you're doing a disservice to your country. You're doing a disservice to their education. I'm
Absolutely.
not talking about. I'm not talking about nationalism, which is what the liberals worry. Civics is going to be a nationalism class. It's going to be hyped up with all this stuff to make people you know super nationalists. It's what it is a knowledge of, hey, my vote counts. My vote doesn't count when I vote for president, but I'm more likely to come out and vote for president than I am to vote for my county commissioner.
Yeah. You know,
So
most,
you
you know,
can't, most people don't know that.
Yeah. Like you said, most members of government are good people, and there are ways to contact them. There are ways to make your voice heard. That isn't taught. Most of the government, everything I was basically taught in government was exclusively about the federal government and what the elected officials themselves do. not what we the citizens do, not the how do we elect, how does the electoral college really work? You don't really get taught that, so most people don't know. You don't get taught in depth, what do your rights mean? I mean, you get the rough idea, but what does constitute freedom of religion? What are the two clauses that establish that, and how do they work, and what do they do? That part will not be explored, merely that you have a quote freedom of religion with no further context and no further elaboration. And you straight up do raise people who have such a rudimentary understanding of the government that they are very easily manipulated. It is very easy, and this goes for many subjects, not just government. This is really bad with economics right now. If people have a very rudimentary knowledge, they are easy to manipulate. It is easy for news media to claim that the Biden economy is great because it has only 3% unemployment. But that isn't as good as it really sounds, because most citizens don't know that the individuals who aren't looking for work in the first place don't count in that, and that is where a lot of the issues are coming from.
Or a
The
person that has or a person who has two jobs actually counts as, two separate jobs, not one job,
Yes,
one person.
absolutely.
The system is it's very deep. So,
And
and
and we've seen a lot of it.
economics is not taught in the way it's supposed to be, because
No.
we wait till college. We wait till college, but just a basic understanding of how your taxes. Why do I pay taxes? Which taxes do I pay? What is this FICA, tax? What is this Social Security tax? What are these taxes? What do they do for me later on in life? Do we
Yeah.
have any understanding? No, I have a big chunk of my paycheck taken out by the government. I'm mad about it. I'm a Republican. Oh, I have this money being taken out of my paycheck to make sure that my life is taken care of when I get older. That that's not the truth in both. It's kind of a little of both, but nobody wants to look at it that way.
And think about how much, and because so much of our economic policy has devolved into manipulating those who don't understand, we end up with Jerome Powell at the Fed, who, oh, well, we have every reason to raise inflation rates because we're about to go into a period of inflation. Nah, extremely loose. There's an election year coming up. That's mostly a theory. Or you have how every news media outlet, every conservative news media outlet would brag about Trump's less than 1% inflation rate. Like that's the true measure of a healthy economy. But that an inflation rate that low is not a good sign either. A high inflation rate is bad, but a super low one is too. The same goes for unemployment, but people don't understand those basic statistics. They don't understand that the Fed's job is to battle against inflation, and to mostly battle against inflation, not to keep their interest rates low. And you lose that basic edge, and
So,
instead it gets in the hand of the media, who can spin any element of government, any element of economics, history, in whatever direction they want, because people don't really know, and so they're easily tricked, and it can lead to a lot of dishonest government.
so our discussion today is on government stepping in to teach civics, right?
Yes.
I I come to the understanding that I believe they should put more effort into teaching civics.
Yes.
I gave you my 8 points that I think that civics should cover.
Heck yeah.
Um, and I think that, yes, government should step in to teach it. I agree with you on, I think every student before they graduate high school should take a citizenship test, not pass or fail. I don't care where they come out. I just want the answer to my knowledge to see if we're teaching the right thing. If they can pass a citizenship test, if you can get in the 90 or 80 percentile of those people, those students passing, that's all I want. Like, I don't care if they get the score back. I want to know whether we're actually teaching our students the right thing. So that test would not, for me, that citizenship test has nothing to do with your graduation or anything else. It's just taken
Yes.
so that we can measure, are we teaching our young people to be able to adult after college?
Yeah. And perhaps instead of punishing you for failing it, instead, if you did really well, you would get some kind of award. Maybe you
I
get
don't
an
want you to
extra.
really, I really don't want you to know your results. I mean,
Yeah,
unless you have to, because I just want a measurement. I don't want
yeah,
anybody to feel, you know, better than anybody else. I don't want somebody to feel worse, but because they
yeah,
didn't do good.
makes
I
sense.
just want the same thing we do for naturalized citizens. Now
Yeah,
they need to know their score, but the same thing we do, the same knowledge that we empower them with, we should empower our own students with.
yeah. And also, I think this is a more uniting issue than most of the country realizes. You know, both sides have accrued a paranoia that the other side's entire purpose and investment in the teaching of government and their entire investing in history is politicization. You know, it's to sway them. You know, the liberals are going to try to push, you know, LGBTQ propaganda on your kids through civics class. You know, they're going to try to, you know, teach you about how equity is the main important thing. And then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, liberals are concerned that conservatives are going to try to force nationalism and maybe hardcore stances against immigration, things like that. But I think most Americans have a very good idea. Most informed Americans have a very good idea of what good civics looks like. It doesn't have to be, you can talk about politics without being political, if that makes sense.
I
You
don't
know,
think civics is politics. I think
yeah,
civics is just I think civics is like an engineering class. It
yeah,
shows you how it's built. It shows
yeah,
you, where the deficiencies are and where the strengths are.
yeah,
Government is good, government is bad, but you know what? You being involved in government makes it better. So those
yeah.
are the things we need to teach.
Yeah, no, and you can teach the very basics of political philosophy without indoctrination. You can
Mhm.
teach that many conservatives prefer their laws to be more state oriented and the federal government stick within their narrowly defined lanes via the constitution. You know, that many liberals favor more aggressive action from the federal government to fight against social issues, you know, and get involved with the economy. You can teach those things without indoctrinating them either way. Truly, you can. But I think that so many people have let paranoia take over that they just don't trust their schools anymore to do it. And it's really sad. It really is. Like this is not ultimately, this is not a particularly complicated issue. We talk a lot about deep, complicated issues here on You Can't Make This Shit Up. You know, things with many different sides to the story that many people interpret differently on a fundamental level. But I think we can all agree, or at the very least, nearly all agree, that we need to inform our young citizens properly. What can they do to get involved with their government? How is their government structured? What does it do? What does it not do? Very critically, what does it not do? You know, what are the basic symptoms of a good economy? What is the role of the Federal Reserve? And no, it is not to keep your interest rates low. That is not the purpose of it. You know, to not only provide make citizens smarter, understand what they do when they go to the polling station, but also make them less susceptible to being tricked, you know, by dishonest people during campaign season. And I think that's probably my
You can't
final
make
word.
this shit up.
You can't make this
You
shit
can't
up.
make this shit up. I mean, do we trust them or do we not? I mean, this is what we've come to. Thank you very much. Please like, please share, please, you know, argue with us if you need to. But we want you to be engaged, subscribe. This is You Can't Make This Shit Up. That was Kellen Clark, and I'm Joel Hoxley. Thank you.